մենք ունենք շատ հետաքրքիր մի ելույթ, Նինո Արոշիձեն, մեր գոլեգան Բաթումիի Շոթա Ռուսթավելու անվան պետական համալսարանից կներկայացնի դա թարգմանության դասընթացի ադապտացումը և վերջում մի 10-15 րոպե մենք հնարավորություն ունենանք հարցեր տալ և քննարկել։
I must ask first of all, do you really need me to speak using the microphone, or I can speak to you like this? Should I speak louder? Мне громче говорить, всем слышно? Или лучше в микрофон?
Нет, но без микрофона не смогут.
Без микрофона не получится?
Не смогут разводить.
All right. First of all, I'd like to thank Lilith for advertising my presentation. We are not yet sure that it's so interesting as Lilith said, but let's see. Maybe your questions afterwards will make the presentation more valuable and interesting, so I will be really glad, and I would really appreciate if you don't hesitate and ask me anything you have in mind while you listen to me. So today I'd like to present my university's experience in adapting in translation course. When I say the word adapting, in fact I mean tailoring the course, because actually our university has introduced translation department, and the course was in a place, but it was for 3- and 4-year studies. Where there's English philology students who focus on linguistics and literary studies, they did not have translation studies for some time, and we have decided 10 years ago we have decided to introduce the course for them as well. I have been teaching for 10 years, and I have been translating for 12 years, and for 9 years, I think, or 10, I've been teaching translation. So today what I present is something which is based on my experience, what are the best way of teaching translation to foreign languages students, or in our case English philology students, when you have very limited time, very limited contact hours for this course. Translation is one of those courses where one of those knowledge and skills, and one of those jobs where practical work is very, very important. For every, I think so, but translation is very sensitive in terms of the balance you have to keep when you design the course. So let's see how it actually goes with the longer course and how it goes with shorter course. And as I said, it's based on the observations we have done with our students in the last 6 years. Well, I'm not using some quotes probably because, other people tend to formulate ideas much more interesting in a better way than I do. So this Peter Newman himself is a translator, and these are his wonderful words when he claims that those who can, they write. Those who cannot write, okay, they translate. Those who cannot translate, write about translation. Well, boy. Well, the point is that I have experienced nearly everything which is on the list. But I couldn't find myself, when I had become a translator, a teacher of translation studies. I couldn't locate myself here anyway, and I really fear, judging by irony that, or a bit of sarcasm probably even felt in Newmark's words, I can say that I even fear to imagine where I, as a translator, or anyone here who probably teaches translation, will be. So let's look at the next slide, and probably it will tell us where we are as translators, as translation teachers. The first part, let's call it a paragraph, it actually shows the target group for our presentation and for this course. And the target group is English philology students. The number of students in the overall number, total, let's put it this way, varies from 80 or 90, or I'm a terrible liar, it's actually supposed to be 80, from 80 to 120. But if you look at the course length, yes, the groups can be divided, right, when it comes to practical hours, but the real tragedy is that for teaching translation, we have only 30 contact hours. And if some people actually learned translation or how to translate or taught translation, will probably share my my opponents with this one, because this is really scandalous. You know, like 15 hours for theory, 15 hours for practice. That's 2 hours per week. We have 15-week term. And I must say, if you compare it to the minimal number of hours the translation studies students have, you will see the difference. You'll feel it. 240 hours, that's minimum, only translation. Does not include the language course or anything like that. And in selective courses, they even have an opportunity to choose more, like literary translation and stuff like that. So here, if we go back to Peter Newmark and his words, I must say that we are, according to this table, I think we are real warriors and fighters, because we fight all the time with the department that we need more contact hours. We are liars when we lie we lie to our students that we are able to teach them really something solid, probably, and we lie to ourselves when we think we can teach successfully. So I can't say that whatever we did with this course, it was something extraordinary, and it met the needs of all 120 or even all 80 students that we have. But I must say that gradually we have come up with some solution to 30-hour course problem. It cannot be extended, it's not possible. So as one of our Armenian colleagues had said before, we want the best, but we have what we have. Right? So what we have, as I said, is 30 hours. Now, some people think that translation can be, if you know 2 languages, it's easy to translate, and you can do it. What's the big deal? Other people think that if it is practical, fine, good, but you can't live without theory, you should do it. I'm not here just to marry these 2 parties. It's kind of not possible to do it in such a short term. What we need to see is what balance we should keep in order to what balance of theory and practice in order to be able to really build professional competencies that will allow translators future translators to achieve something in the future. In order to do that, of course, we have to look at the objective of the course. The course itself, of course, is rather intensive. If you have to cover all of this, like linguistic competence, communicative competence, professional competence, and you build all these capacities and competencies, and there are lots of building and construction works ongoing. Now, what is realistic to build? I must say that there are lots of visions of what competencies translators need. One of the competencies, but nearly everyone singles out so-called general or basic competence if you look at it. Some people don't select general or basic, they have just linguistic and professional. So everything related to the knowledge of the translation process, everything related to the knowledge of how different genres work, how you should actually do probably simultaneous translation. So that's what most of linguists, they think, or translation theorists, they think should build the professional competence. But if you see, well, if you can hardly see, but trust me, it's like that. So most of them actually single out so-called general or basic competence. And when it comes to 30-hour course, this is something we should keep in mind. So let's clarify what can be this basic competence on which we can build some other professional ones. I must say that when we enter the course, usually we have to fight not only the 30-hour course, but we also have to consider students' attitude. Again, as I said, the attitude is students' motivation and their trust in you that you are able to teach them something through 30 hours or is something that you need to gain from them. And you have to do it from the very beginning, otherwise they simply won't follow you, right? So at the beginning we do needs assessment to check who's planning to work in translation, who has already experienced it. And we usually discover that before teaching any general competence in translation, we actually have to overcome the prejudice with students. English philologists quite often think that, one, translation is easy if you know two languages. This is one category. The second category of students is they look at you with, eyes wide open, and they say, their attitude is that translating is like magic to them, and you have to be, I don't know, Harry Potter at least, and go to Hogwarts School of Wizardry Translation. Really, that's true. So they are never planning to even try translation. That's what we quite often discover at the beginning of the course when I do needs assessment. And when you start talking to them, I mean, like I conduct interviews, when you start talking to them, it turns out that they think of this about literary translation of fiction, or poem. But unfortunately, they transfer this prejudice to non-literary texts. So when it comes to 30-hour course, let's forget literary texts completely, because this is a subject for a different course, and let us focus on the non-literary texts. Now, when I say of non-literary text, another thing that pops up in mind is, okay, what kind of text we should teach? Because this is also dealing with specific genres is one of the professional competencies. So, can we incorporate it in those 30 hours? Now, let's see what our employers usually expect. This is what they expect, text, all right? There's nothing else they need to know. So when I say text, it's actually oral text, so they need to interpret it, do simultaneous or consecutive translation, or it's written text, and the worst thing is of any genre. Because when it comes to getting employed, I remember my employment experience, my colleagues' employment experience as translators, you are asked to translate the text without any preparation, quite often without a dictionary. It's kind of unfair because economists, lawyers, they quite often are not required to do any pre-test. And in addition to that, you have probation period, right? Quite often again. So what they need from you is you should be able to handle any kind of text, and you should know every word in the dictionary. So that's what they expect from us, and that's what our students are afraid that they won't be able to do. So what are they able to do? If we look at this very limited list, these are basic things that we usually cover in the extended course. This is text genres, so as I said, literary, non-literary, but non-literaries are also divided. It's business translation, business documentation, legal documents, it's technical documents, it's scientific text, and stuff like that. And it's only for written translation. And for oral translation, it can be interviews, it can be public speech and stuff, the rest. Now, again, topical vocabulary, developing short-term memory, editing skills, dealing with translation models, that's a pretty theoretical subject. But again, everything comes down to what? Can a fully fledged course, so the extended course, can it do that? The answer is no. Unfortunately, I was going through my material and I didn't hear one of our guests here actually speaking about that. But when I heard the word Tharman, I realized that she's talking about translation, right? The previous session. Yes, yes. In Georgian, the word means the same. And when I asked one of the guests, so what are they talking about? And he told me that the lady, unfortunately I don't know her name, but I'd like to speak to her after this. Oh, that's you? Yes. My condolences. Right. So Alexeyeva had absolutely the same problem, which you mentioned. So she says, well, I usually work without my translators, a lot of future translators, my students, and one day, one of my students, she called me and said, but you know, Tamara Alexeyevna, whatever her name was, I remember the surname, Tamara Alexeyevna, but no, помните, мы проходили технические тексты, we have done technical text, but we have never translated anything oil related, all right? So oil and refinery and stuff like that. So we have never done it, she said. And Alexeyeva's answer was, but it is impossible to do everything. Even a fully fledged course, how many genres you can cover? Can you cover instructions to the iron? You do? No, it's just not possible, even when it is fully fledged. Nothing to say about when it is so limited. When it comes to fully fledged text, we still manage to cover basic genres, like legal documents, but legal documents have subdivisions. Can we do it with 30 hours? Well, partly yes. But again, you have to be very modest. You can't, do too many text genres. You can pick up 2, maybe, okay, if you're lucky, 3, 4. 4 was maximum, which I have managed in the group, because the level of the group also dictates you what you can do with them. And we have covered, I have tried, for example, contract translation. That's a legal document. I always do business translation. That's also very important. But how it works, translation is the skill, It's not only theoretical knowledge, but it's a skill. Now, and when it is now the skill, this is something you can't just, when you show the person or you let the person read about it or even try mnemonic exercise to develop short-term memory, you have to do mnemonic exercise for years in order to develop this skill. So what the solution in this case would be, I guess you do the same, you just show them how you can develop it. And then you see a motivated student who works on himself or herself will do that at home. You can occasionally do it with them. So sure, okay, this exercise will help you to develop mnemonic exercise, and you can actually do it. But when you have 15 hours, you do it first class, then you do it third class maybe, and then you forget it. Because they know it, you showed direction. Fortunately, unfortunately, this is the kind of a class where I really felt what it is like to be facilitator and a guide. All right, you just guide. Okay, this is the tree, this is the forest, just go in that direction. All right. Unfortunately, when it comes to developing certain skills like short-term memory, it is the case. It is more feasible to develop other skills like dealing with genres. And this is the case where we changed our approach, not completely, but significantly. Lots of theorists, they single out genres, like legal documents, this and that. I again share Alexeyeva's approach when she says it doesn't matter what genre it is, what matters is what is the function of the text. And I really try to agitate and promote text-based, function-based approach rather than genre-based approach. If you take the text, for example, she singles out that, yes, legal document, if you take it, what is its main function? Usually it's a cognitive function, so it means it provides information. If you take a poem, its function is appealing, it's aesthetic as well, so it gives you aesthetic pleasure. But you really rarely see the text, which has only one function. So even when you translate business document, it doesn't help you if you read tons of material of that these kind of documents have lots of cliches and so on. What you have to look at is what is the function which the text bears. For example, when we translated just one sentence from a business letter, it proved to be a very difficult task for our students. For example, I unfortunately forgot to put it on the slide. So the letter started, we regret to inform you that your application didn't qualify. So in this, we regret to inform you, got very different translations. So unfortunately, I will say this in Russian actually, то есть мы с сожалением сообщаем, вынуждены сообщить вам или с сожалением сообщаем вам. В общем, звучало очень трагично. It sounds very tragical. It sounds like, oh, unfortunately, regret to inform you, something like that. So if a Georgian, the point is that the style of Georgian letter is pretty different from English, and it's rather drier. So if you start a letter saying this, we regret to inform you, a Georgian reader of the letter will expect that you, in fact, do not regret. These words, regret, they show emotion of the writer. Even if they don't regret, they show you. So that's a pragmatic level when it comes to professional competence, dealing with pragmatic level of the text, translating it as well. Not only its content, its meaning, but the pragmatic level. So that if I want to show my emotions in the letter, your translation should also do that. And our translators, some of our students, when they translated, you know, it sounded like the other part of the group, they were like, oh, come on, it sounds like you wanted to tell me that my granny died, all right? That's how it sounds, even in Russian language. So what our solution is, compensation, for example, right? We said, oh, unfortunately, you didn't qualify, right? That's more natural for Georgian and Russian as well, but more Georgian, I would say. So this is just one example of how you deal with the text, with text-based approach rather than genre. Another example of text-based approach can take us too far, so I'd like to keep it short. So another example, as I said, short-term memory, that's also professional competence. So we take a little bit glimpse of here and there from specific competencies, which we have here, professional competences. And we have to turn them into general, because general means theoretical knowledge based on practical one, but at a very limited level. And as I said, you just give them the taste of it, and then they build on it. But there's still some skills, and there is some knowledge, which you can't leave like that. In case of memory, short-term memory, you can do just direction, just showing direction. But when you deal with types of the text, as I said, here you need still some work. And this is the part which gets the most hours in our 15-hour for practical translation. I must say that for our translators, it was really challenging to deal with certain aspects that were there. So, as I said, you take the general one, and based on this general one, you build the rest. So now when they more or less know what genres they can work with, and now that they know what levels they have to go through, that's cognitive, so informative part of the text, that's pragmatic level of the text, right? That's probably aesthetic level of the text. If you translate, for example, the words better dead than red, it also needs rhyming, right? So because it doesn't sound like a poem, but it is still a rhyming. And just a sec, I do apologize, I think the switch doesn't work.
It's working.
Okay. Oh, right, I'm sorry, I just mixed up the direction. Okay, so what we have tailored in our course, as I said, when it comes to mixing general and specific. So we changed our genre-based approach to text function-based approach when it came to translation of the text. We also focused on strategies that can help you to handle any kind of text, just any kind of text. And what are these strategies? Again, as we said, you have to figure out the aim of the text, and then you look for, you learn to work with the corpus language, so text corpus. So if you, for example, have to translate the contract, that you have to collect this information, you compare to similar ones, and this is the skill they still need to learn. You may assume that they know it since the birth, I don't know, but it turns out they don't, and you actually have to show them how it works. If they do it, like Alexeyeva claims, right? If you do it in case of one type of technical text, for example, construction works, then this student should not have a problem dealing with oil refinery related text, because she will be able to apply the same skills she acquired there. And that is comparison of the text corpus, the texts, that is, for example, working with the resource material, consultation with the experts, and stuff like that. If it works in one kind of technical text, it should for sure work in another kind of text. And this allows us to fancy that it actually helps students. I must say that when we conduct, again, not needs assessment, but a kind of a review, summary for our course, by the end, lots of students actually indicate their improvement. Not only us, but they themselves feel. And we have discovered through, again, a survey of our alumnus, unfortunately we couldn't reach all of them in the last 6 years, but we have contacted a significant number. Over 50% of them actually have already tried themselves in translation. Not all of them remain in the business, but the number has increased. Before that, they even didn't want to hear about translation. They were so scared they will never manage. So when it comes to text-based, it actually works. At least that's how we discovered. Another thing you have to focus on for sure, another practical thing, that's techniques and tools students use, and that's lexical, grammatical, stylistic transformations they use. Actually, it quite often keeps at the theoretical level as well. This is where theory is needed a lot, and we usually allow like at least 6 hours to cover this issue. Of course, strongly linked to the texts themselves. Things like history of translation and things like, I haven't put everything here, my written version of this will actually have a more detailed description of the syllabi itself. So history of translation, which is part of the extended course, models of translation, again the part of the extensive course, was not completely kicked out. Models were completely. I discovered that it only messes the students up. But history of translation, it's enough to mention at the beginning when it all started, and you can forget it. No one really needs it. Because they need more practical issues, which we mentioned before. That's legal requirements, how to translate the name of the organization, because we have legal requirement of that. And that is something I can tell them. It's not something they can easily read, because it's law. And I tell them, I share my experience with them. And they then have to use it in their class, practically. And they need these rules of transcription. They even don't know this. So this is more important than discussing when translation was born, or, for example, what different models fail at doing, or what they're good at. Just give them translation to do, and that's it. Then the third point we also considered very important was building mainly the basic components, as I said. I will not repeat that, because this is a part of the translation competence, which is feasible to reach. So you can't really dive that deep into professional competence. Here I just want to add another thing about professional competence. One of the examples of professional competences is, for example, really going in one direction. And lots of countries like France, for example, Canada, they have examples when translations work only on fiction, translation of fiction, only on translation of legal documents, or only doing simultaneous translation in medicine, because they excel at that. Competitiveness is high. But the specific situation in Georgia does not allow you to work only in one specific genre. That's why it is just simply not possible for us to stick only to the general, to different genres, as I said. We have to stick with all of them together at the same time. But we can't do that, so we pick up the most basic ones. And this then becomes feasible. We also have included flexible components. As I said, flexible component is the genre, how many genres you can cover. This is something that probably is out of question. I was really put it down on this list or no. So when the genres and topics should serve as illustrations for pre-analysis and for doing time translation techniques in class. Oh, it's kind of over. Congratulations. Thank you for your attention. If you have any questions around the topic, I'm more than happy to answer them. Or no. So, of course.
Շնորհակալություն Նինո, այնտեղ մենք հարց ունենք, միայն կխնդրեի միկրոֆոնով, որ
հայերեն, անգլերեն միացնեմ։
ինձ համար հատկապես շատ տպավորիչ էր անտառում ճանապարհ գտնելու, չէ՞, շատ մյուս բոլոր մասնագիտությունների մեջ է, չէ՞, դա ունենք։
Since the speaker is not wearing the headphones, I will translate the comment of the facilitator moderator for you. She said that she was impressed with your simile about taking a direction in the forest. Okay, so the question as such is, now, as far as I could understand, you have an academic program of translation, which is what you call the full-fledged. 2. Why 2?
I meant this academic, not a course, but actually the faculty itself.
Yeah, the program.
The program, you can call it the module, and the course, we usually call the course a particular subject.
Yeah.
So just to make sure.
So in my understanding, when you have a program
And the course.
And the course is for philology students.
Yes.
Yes. Now, you have the learning outcomes for the academic program for philologists. Did you introduce any changes in the learning outcomes? And if you did introduce the change, then what is the logical connection between the course? Why was the course introduced? Only because the students were interested in taking it or not? And because I have a lot of questions. And the second one is, if you believe, or if your students believe that it is such an important or essential competence for them, then perhaps you could find more time to be allocated to the translation course. I mean, more than 30. And the other option is, perhaps you could integrate and incorporate elements of translation in other purely language courses. So 3 for the beginning to start with.
I just forgot the second question. I was trying to write, but that's okay. Usually I'm better with short-term memory, but today I'm a bit tired. So when it comes to learning outcomes, so that's what I'm saying. So we were dissatisfied with the learning outcomes that we received at the beginning. I must say that I was young and stupid, let's put it this way, when I wanted to squeeze lots of things in the course, because first, in my career, when I started, not only when I was already doing translation, when I started teaching translation studies, I got the group with extensive course. And with them, I was more at leisure, had time, I had an opportunity, a motive, and so on. So I actually could hit the nail in case of most of the students. So they got what they wanted, not everyone, of course. I mean, translators group is much smaller, not 120 or even 80 students. It's like a group of 20, 25 people. And we had actually rather good selection at the beginning. Now just the overall situation changed. I'm not going to deal with that. But I remember the first 2-3 waves had very high standards, linguistic competence at the starting point. Now it's just a kind of a national strategy of just decreasing it. You know, it's a different system of accepting students. So it changed. But in the past, we had an opportunity for oral tests before we accepted students. So when the level was much higher with students, our learning outcomes was rather successful with the practical part, because students were really self-confident about their language. And we actually had to polish their translation skills, really, in terms of theoretical knowledge of what to do, how to really translate, as I said, proper name. They couldn't transcribe, they knew language well, but when it came to different versions of one and the same vowel transcription, they were lost. They didn't know some details about how to properly apply stylistic, for example, transformation, and they had even less knowledge about the editing skills and stuff like that. So what we had to do is, when I switched to the shorter course, I suddenly discovered that actually the course was even longer, 60 hours. The course was longer, and I discovered that I couldn't incorporate everything. And as I said, I was dissatisfied with myself when the learning outcomes showed that they had high knowledge of some theoretical subject, like models of translation. But again, remembering how I myself got the job as a translator, how my colleagues do that, and how my graduates do that, I realized that models of translation is something they don't need. History of translation is something they don't need. So we kicked it out, and the learning outcomes in terms of really skills development has increased at that level. Initially, I also was afraid of incorporating oral translation and interpretation. In the last 3 years, I have incorporated it too. I don't manage to do it, but I get lots of thanks from my students. Well, lots of curses too, so I don't want to say that the course is something magical. No. But I can't achieve with everyone. But if we take a reasonable number of students who have achieved success, I'm now speaking about them as well, mostly them, when they first try how to do oral translation, they say, "Ooh, we never imagined." So they can do good written translation, but they are lost most when they do oral translation. So we're now working at this as well. I'm still dissatisfied with this component, but I have incorporated it, and I'm happy how it goes. I want to do it even better. So learning outcomes in this respect was changed. Another thing when you said, why not working on increasing, that was the second question, yes. Why not increasing the number of hours? It's not only us. As I said, we are warriors because we fight with our department to increase the hours, and just simply not possible with our new credit systems. You also have credit system in certain universities. You know how difficult it is sometimes to shift, and people fight for every credit. So it is really difficult. But the solution to this was actually something you have already hinted in your, it was a kind of tricky question because the answer was already given in the question. It was like a suggestion, why don't you incorporate it? I also teach theory of language, like language typology and so on. And when it comes to this, I actually ask them, theoretical grammar. I actually ask them, how would you translate gerund, for example, as participle? Present participle is not something as a grammatical category in Georgian language. And when I do it, they're like, oh my God, how am I supposed to translate? There was a movie with Michael Douglas, it was Falling. And we failed to translate it without, and we translated it as a noun. We couldn't do it because we don't have grammatical category for participle, present participle in our language and stuff like that. So yes, I'm trying to be cunning, let's say it this way. I incorporate it in other subjects. It just doesn't show really the picture. I can't use it in my study because it's just a drop in the ocean, this kind of thing. But another thing that we have done is we have the 60 credit component as a selected course. And I must tell you that in the last 4 years, Nana is my colleague, who is involved also in this Manhattan project, I'm involved. Every year, since we incorporated it, we get more and more students. That's true. I just can't remember the numbers. I really forgot, but I will include it in my writing. We get more and more students after they taste this 30-hour course who choose oral translation as a separate course, audiovisual translation, who choose translation, and this year, for the first time, Nana also got 41 students for written translation. For selected course, it's something extraordinary, really. 41 students, usually it's 15, it is 16. It is gradually working, and as I said, this course, I think, is a little weaker without these selected courses. And what you suggested, yes, you should find different solutions. This was the solution we tried. And we discovered that selected courses work because you give students choice, and that's a good thing. I'm not giving them choice. So you give them a try, you give them the taste, and then they can, again, as I said, build on that. I have oral translation only as a course, and there we work on non-oral translation. Nana has written translation. She deals with much more genres of written translation, which I didn't manage to do that. And of course, we try to do it so that it doesn't overlap, because we cooperate, Nana and I, in this course. Thank you for your questions. It's obvious that you teach translation.
Yeah, I'm the chair of English translation and communication, so
it's really an honor.
Yeah, I can dominate the floor.
Thank you.
Շնորհակալություն, այլ հարցեր կամ կարծիք, խնդրեմ։
So, can I run away to my seat? Oh, no.
Okay. Thank you very much. I will start my question with compliments to you. I would say that whatever you teach, you will be very successful. Because you speak very, very well.
Are you talking about me?
Yes, very sweetly.
I thought it was a different person.
No, I'm talking to you. You were talking
about the second wave of praise. I do apologize. Please ask your question.
I would like to put this mic to the place. Okay. I would like to hear about the interpretation issues, because you were talking about translation, but you didn't cover enough about interpretation. And there is slight difference, not slight.
Oh,
for us, for the users, for the end users, it's slight difference, but for the professionals, it's quite different, two different things. So if you could cover your practice about
even the words when they
and the some question again to this issue. What about the mother tongue subtext when you feel that it's mother tongue written, person who was or mother tongue speaker, and the rest of the world, because we all speak English, but every nation has its own perception of the English language. We don't speak equally English, yes? There are differences.
I'm not sure I really understood the last question.
Native speaker versus non-native.
Yes, the translation which comes from native speakers and non-native. Because where you were talking about how to put the sentence, yes, and how you translated it. The same is also with the mother tongue speaker. He would put the sentence in a different way, and we would translate it completely differently because of the language differences. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your questions. I think I'm displaying poor translation skills because, I mean, poor memory skills because it's really difficult for me to cover everything. If I forget, please remind me. So, the first question that we mentioned was actually interpreting. Honestly, when I say translation, as I said, it's really difficult to give them general skills, to develop general skills of translation. It's easier to do it when you have written text in front of you. And as I said, in the last 3 years, I have introduced this oral translation, or so-called interpretation, right? And when we interpret, of course, different genres are involved, like public speech or interviews, something you generally don't find in written translation. On the contrary, some written genres are used, like open lecture. It can be scientific, it can be technical or something like that, and usually it's written genre, but you find them in a presentation, for example, open lecture, and you have to translate it. So again, it's a mix of genres and so on. Interpreting, I have a separate course, and there I think we more or less successfully deal with it. But here in this 30-hour course, we only try. I have only 4 hours for this, I have to admit it, and I try actually conversation, just dialogue, very simple dialogue. We start with it, switching from one language into another, and then we shift to translation of the presentation. It can be technical, it can be social issues, or something like that. So, right? So, interpreting, right, it's so different sometimes. It's so difficult for students that I can't let them leave my course without trying it. But I must admit, I can't really successfully do it. But lots of students choose it, so we solve this problem there. Another thing that you wanted to know actually dealt with this native and non-native production of the language, right? So I must say that this is something that comes with the development of language skills. Of course, the better language you know, the better text you produce. And this is the area where we step into the dreamland, because it's a dream for us, because the rule of thumb is if you have an interpreter, right, that interpreter who works for us today actually does two-sided translation. So she translates one of the same text into her native language, and she does vice versa. Actually, the rule of thumb is translating into your native language, right? Because then the translation itself sounds more natural. The problem is that it is kind of not possible, for our Georgia at least. If you translate, you have to do everything, all right? And sometimes when we also, there is another aspect. I'm not sure what exactly you want to talk about, because I can talk about it for hours. Another aspect when it comes to native language, which can be preventative of successful translation, is when they actually have to translate something into their native language, and it takes them more time to formulate the idea, not in written translation, but in interpretation. But when they do translation into non-native language, like English, it goes smoother, the pace is better. It seems to be a paradox, but I agree with some of the scientists. It's my also observation that tells me, and also started asking students to see how it works, why. And lots of students actually claim that they come up with so many ideas, so many versions of one and the same sentence in their native language, that it takes them time to choose the one. And when it comes to English, non-native for them, they start producing only one or two because they're very limited in structure. Is that what you want to discuss, or something different? Because I have a feeling that I haven't satisfied your... yes. Right. Okay. Anyone else?
Շնորհակալություն, այլ հարցեր, ըստ էության մեր ժամանակը արդեն սպառվել է եւ մենք ունենք ընդամենը 5 րոպե հանդիսանալու համար, մյուսները կգան այստեղ եւ մենք արդեն օրվա արդյունքների ամփոփում եւ քննարկում կանցկացնենք։ Շնորհակալություն Նինո, շատ հետաքրքիր եւ լարված։
No more questions now, I can see? Yes. Thank you for your attention.